began with the forging of the great rings. 3 were given to the elves, immortal, wisest, and fairest of all beings.
Strangers from distant lands, friends of old, you've been summoned here to answer the threat of Mordor.
Frodo! I swore to protect you.
Can you protect me from yourself?
Welcome back, everyone. If you're anything like me, you're a huge Lord of the Rings fan. I honestly can't believe it's been over 20 years since the Fellowship began its journey towards Mount Doom. Now, before the movies had come out, I had never actually heard of Lord of the Rings. I had read The Hobbit and watched the cartoon Hobbit film from the 70s, but that's as far as it went for me. I was only 12 years old when the Fellowship came out, and after seeing it in theaters a couple times, I was hooked. I waited until the DVDs came out and bought The Fellowship the day it was released in stores. Then the same with The Two Towers, and then The Return of the King. I remember telling my older sister just a few weeks after we had watched Return of the King in theaters, for like the 3rd time, that those movies were such an adventure and set the bar so high that nothing could ever top them as far as visuals and storytelling. I felt that no movie after these would even be worth going to the theaters for. I know, a little extreme, but that's what happens when you experience something so magical and meaningful that changes you so deeply. I had watched these movies and all the special features so many times that I could easily quote all 3 movies without much effort, and I thought I would wear out the discs or my DVD player, so I rationed myself to only once a year. But after a while, I hadn't watched them in several years, even after the new Hobbit movies had come out, and even that was a decade ago. So I was rummaging through my old DVD collection and I found these. These are the DVDs as they were released about a year or less after they came out in theaters. They were my prized possessions for many years, until I learned about the extended edition box set with all the behind-the-scenes appendices. I thought that once those came out, that this was the pinnacle of the Lord of the Rings experience. However, just this past year, we were gifted with the most amazing gift from our most favorite director, Peter Jackson himself, the Lord of the Rings 4K Ultra HD Extended Edition box set. Jackson and his team at Park Road Post-Production spent months, if not a year or so, on perfecting the remaster from the normal 1080p resolution to a crisp, sharp 4K with updated color correction and a color grade. I've watched The Fellowship and now The Two Towers, and I've noticed that several scenes look so much better as far as coloring and sharpness, so let's take a look at those. The first scene I want to look at, and the one that stood out the most in my eyes, was the Council of Elrond. If you remember, the original scene was quite warm and seemed to have a heavy orangish red tint to it, which for me was quite distracting sometimes. So, let's take a look at that scene from the original release. Roll the clip.
Strangers from distant lands, friends of old, you've been summoned here to answer the threat of Mordor. Middle-earth stands upon the brink of destruction. None can escape it. You will unite or you will fall. Each race is bound to this fate, this one doom.
Bring forth the ring.
Frodo.
Now, let's take a look at the 4K remaster.
Strangers from distant lands, friends of old, you've been summoned here to answer the threat of Mordor. Middle-earth stands upon the brink of destruction. None can escape it. You will unite or you will fall. Each race is bound to this fate, this one doom. Bring forth the ring, Frodo.
As you can see, they went back and completely rehashed all the coloring work and made them look so much better, along with the 4K upscaling and sharpening. Now, let's look at a darker scene to show you how well they kept the dark and foreboding look, but also brighten the shot to allow you to see even more detail in the scene. Roll the clip.
Let them come. There is one dwarf yet in Moria who still draws breath.
Now, let's look at the 4K version.
Let them come. There is one dwarf yet in Moria who still draws breath.
Now, doesn't that look spectacular? Every scene I watched, I was more and more impressed with how the lighting, coloring, and sharpness had been reworked and made to look so amazing. There's so much detail in the scenes that I never saw before, especially when you watch them on the 4K Ultra HD TV. All the clothing, jewelry, and armor has so much more visible detail that just adds to the authenticity and realism of these colossal modern-day epics. When looking at the side-by-side comparisons, you can see where certain areas that were overshadowed have now been brightened. But it's more than just brightening a picture. They went scene by scene, frame by frame to make sure every shot was colored and lit properly. Because, as Peter Jackson himself said,
it was interesting going back and revisiting these films because I realized how inconsistent they were, and that's really due to the way in which the Lord of the Rings trilogy was shot first about 20 years ago.
Now you must die.
The Lord of the Rings was shot on 35mm. The color timing was done in an old-fashioned photomechanical way for the first Lord of the Rings movie. Then we switched to digital color timing for the 35mm negative for the next two. Being able to tweak individual colors and it's the sort of thing we just couldn't do 20 years ago. So it's fun to have all the toys now, which I didn't have all this stuff to play with in the old days. And the Hobbit trilogy was nearly 10 years ago now. We were shooting on a digital cameras at 4K and doing a whole different technology for the color timing. So, you know, we shot some days were sunny, some days were overcast. It's always a battle to make something feel consistent when it was shot over a long period of time. So even though they are 6 movies that tell one continuous story, it didn't really have a consistency with the look and sound of the films, just due to the time over which they were made. The thing with 4K is not just to go for pristine sharpness, because it is to preserve the cinematic look at the same time as everything becoming a bit more crisp. You know, it's great to be able to have all the films looking like they were shot at the same time, finally. So what this 4K HDR, which is high dynamic range remastering, has done, has allowed me to make them look and sound consistent. From the first movie, which in the story terms is an unexpected journey, right the way through the 6th to Return of the King, they now feel like it's one big long film telling the same story and looking and sounding the same.
All 3 movies were sort of shot with different cameras and film, so the coloring process was not very consistent. But now, with them having the latest color editing and picture quality editing software, they were able to make them look as good as they do now. When transferring from the OG release to this massive remaster, you were nearly blown back in your seat by the outstanding picture quality and attention to detail, and all the meticulous effort and painstaking work that went into remastering these movies. They deserve all the praise the originals did. Now, I mean, PJ could have easily left well enough alone and moved on to the next project or whatever he's doing currently, but he took the time and effort to gather his team up one more time to painstakingly revisit these 20-year-old films and nearly re-edit them from the ground up. Now, even with all the amazing picture quality and with all the new coloring and high-resolution upscaling, doesn't mean much if you don't have the proper sound mixed right along with it. Now, it's hard for me to show you examples of the high-quality remixed sound and music, but believe me that they certainly put just as much effort into the sound and music as they did the picture quality. For example, I remember the OG version sound seemed a bit unbalanced, to the effect that the loud parts were too loud and the quiet parts were too quiet. I'm sure we've all been there, having to turn the sound up during the quiet moments and then having to frantically turn back down the sound for battle scenes. For what I can say is that now everything is very well balanced, where the quiet moments have been brought up and the louder moments are still loud and impactful, but certainly won't blow out your speakers. Everything has been evened out and very well balanced for a consistent sound level. However, one minor note is that it seems the sound was designed for a home theater, surround sound setup, or one of those new fancy sound bars, of which I have none. So I was just using the normal TV speakers, but I could still tell a massive difference between the new versus the old. If you haven't already, I strongly urge you to look into purchasing this remaster. However, there is a minor note that this particular box set is only the films and has no special behind-the-scenes features of any sort. Now, there is the Ultimate Collector's Edition, which has all 6 movies in the theatrical release and extended edition, all in 4K Blu-ray, with nearly more discs than I can count. Unfortunately, they do not come with all the special behind-the-scenes appendices like the original extended edition box set came with. Alright. Look, I didn't make that decision, but hopefully with enough clamoring from fans that they will release a Ultimate Collector's Edition with the 4K upscaling of the appendices. Who knows? But if you already have the original DVD box set with the appendices, then you're pretty much set. One more drawback. If y'all even remember it, with the original extended edition DVD box set, you got audio commentary from the actors throughout the entire film, which for me was very fun. After watching the film so many times and knowing every line and scene by heart, and then watching them with the actors' commentary was a real treat. Listening to them talk about all the fun they had making the films, and chatting about the scene itself, and harkening back to the mistakes that were never seen, are funny moments that was only known to the cast, and all manner of chit-chat I found quite enjoyable. That is also not a part of any of the new 4K Ultra HD remaster, be it this version or the Ultimate Collector's Edition. However, if you are simply wanting just the 4K Ultra HD films, then this is your time to pick it up. I honestly can't say enough about how thankful I am to PJ and his entire team for putting so much time and effort into these much beloved films, and now remastering them for even further future enjoyment for many years and generations to come. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.